Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me, for the Bible tells me so. Yes. Yeah, Jesus loves me. Hello, my Sirwalterj show. I'm here. It is the evening edition. Baby. How y'all is? Come on in the water. Water's fine. I'm down here in the office trying to see how I could educate the peoples, to see what I can do to further inform you of what's going on amongst the Christian race. Yeah, I said the Christian race. Yeah. Hold on, let me see what I'm doing here. I want to talk about mental illness. I've done this show before, and I'm going to do it again. But I'm going to do it. I guess you could say this is part 2 of a what part series. I don't know. But mental disorder is something that is quite common amongst we who are the body of Christ. Believe it or not, and God has allowed it to be so. Just because you're saved don't mean that you are safe from not just physical ailments, diseases, and pains and agonies, but also that which is mental. It is taboo to talk about it. Tiffany, good to see you. It is a stigma on it, as we all know, and it is very much cultural because African Americans don't talk about it. We don't want to bring it up. Now, I will say, more and more African Americans are talking about mental disorder now than ever have before. All right, that's what I want to encourage you by. I have many friends. My church has talked about it on several occasions. We have shut down Bible studies and focused on trauma, and we did series on grief, which is something that can cause some of these things to happen. I thought you were what? Oh, setting up. Yeah, Deanne, you know me. I'm always setting up a show. Some will come by later on, maybe tomorrow, because it is late. It's about 10:30 tonight on a Thursday night. And those of you who are on YouTube, it's so good to see you. You guys are up. You guys are always up. I love it. All right, so let's talk about this. There is a list of mental disorders that's named out. There is a book that most professionals follow. It is the DSM. I think they're at number 5 now, I believe. Right? It is a diagnostic statistical manual for mental disorders. And in that manual, you'll see a list of common and not so common disorders that many of us walk around with, and some of us don't realize that we have it. And some of us realize that y'all do have it. Some of us realize that y'all do have it, but I don't know, we just don't know how to bring it up to you. So what are some types of mental disorders? Anxiety disorder, including panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, all right, OCD. I've dated women who definitely had that. Phobias, many of us have phobias. Depression. Here's where it start getting really common, because you have some depressed moments, but some of you live in depression. Depression, bipolar, and mood disorders are on the same line. I'll tell you about someone who I dealt with these 3 issues here that almost ruined me. Eating disorders. It doesn't mean because you're fat that you have a eating disorder. There are people who are small or skinny, who are slim like myself, and still have eating disorders, believe it or not. Personality disorders, oh boy. Post-traumatic stress disorder, and psychotic disorders, and schizophrenia. I have met too many people in my line of ministry and in my line of work, worshiping with people and becoming friends with others and having family members who have suffered from all of these, and we did a show 3 years ago where I called it "Mental Illness is in Your Praise." If you go to Facebook and type it in, it's mental illness. It's hidden in your praise. That was the name of my show. I don't know if I ever put that up on YouTube or not. And I went through a lot of the things that we do. Tabitha, good to see you, in our churches, and it seems like we got the Holy Ghost, like it's a disease, and we're praising and worshiping God, but many of the things that we do in our churches seem to be cultural on where they are, but then some of the attitudes and attributes and personalities and characteristics coming from, whether it's the mother's board or the deacon's board or some of the choir members or the ushers, all right? Some of them are very mean and ornery and unforgiving and all these things. A lot of them are dealing with some type of mental disorder, and it's above your pay grade. You just don't know what to call it. And then some of you try to self-diagnose these people, and it's just not your place to do that. You just have to keep praying for them. But it's good that pastors and leaders of churches talk about this thing and bring in professionals to talk about it, because the answer to a lot of these things was to pour oil on people and send them on their way. Good to see you, bro, Bass. Yeah. Okay. Tina, it's good to see you. So the old, the oil and laying hands at the altar and praying for someone who's having issues is an easy escape. So they can come back next week, you see, because if it's not dealt with professionally, except God decides to heal these people, they will continue to go on life with mental disorders, and they will continue to come back to your church and cause division and so discourse among the brethren, because you don't know how to deal with this disorder. Understand? All right, and so your answer is just prayer, and that's it. Seeking counseling for mental disorder, again, it's taboo, especially in the black church. You remember that, Deanne? I did that show. You discussed a particular song where people sang about being out of their minds. Yes, my mind is gone. My mind is gone. Never understood that song. Never did. Even the leader, the Bishop C.H. Mason, who's founded the Church of God in Christ, he would often pray for the minds of the saints, and then he prayed for his own mind. He says, "Loose the devil out of my mind." That's what he would say. So are you saying the church needs a counseling team? Yes, Tina, they sure do. We have doctors in our churches, doctors, whether they're medical doctors or whether they are psychologists and what have you. And many people are in school for psychology and are not being utilized in the churches is because, again, the whole stigma situation. So we need to call them in, and the church need to be free and open. The leaders, it's the leader's responsibility that the flock is fed. If you have a shepherd in your church and he's only feeding you one way, and you might be malnourished. Yeah, sends chills down my spine still. Yeah, Deanne. Yeah, you might be malnourished. The job of the shepherd of the house is to feed the flock and to make sure the flock is fed. I need you to understand those two things. Number one, he physically feeds them. Number two, he makes sure they're fed. You see, that means someone else can feed them, but at least they got fed. Yes, malnourished and imbalanced, Tina. That's it. So these disorders I have come in contact with, both male and female, and some of these disorders are more frequent in women than it is men, and some are more frequent in men than they are in women. Again, some of these disorders are, number one, cultural, number one, sex, depending on the gender. And some just need life coaching and guidance, Pamela. That's true. Fits stigma, lack of knowledge, and fear. That's exactly what's going on here. All right, my ex-wife, I believe in my heart of hearts, she suffered with mania, which is a type of bipolar disorder. And if you Google bipolar disorder, you'll see the symptoms of it. And she fit perfectly all of the symptoms: depression and mood swings. She had anxieties. She would fall out. I mean, she was one person one moment, and then 5 minutes later she was another person. Because that's why they call it bipolar, because you're on two polar ends. And it was ruining the relationship and the people around me. That's just the way it was. All right, so now y'all trying to figure out, oh, your wife so and so. Well, I've been married twice, so you got to do the math and figure out yourself. I ain't gonna tell you who was. The shepherd has to know and accept their own limitations with feeding God's flock. Tina, too many shepherds should be put in jail, or they should be reprimanded for impersonating an officer of the law. They give medical advice. They're not doctors. They give mental advice. They are not psychologists. They're not. Pastors give legal advice. They are not lawyers. They should know when to step up and then when to step back. All right, and this has been the problem with many of us in church, is that we allow our pastors to dictate all aspects of our life. Undiagnosed bipolar, cruel disease, Dan, I know. Undiagnosed, it doesn't get better. Bipolar gets worse as they get older. In some cases, the leader has mental disorder, yes, in many cases. And many suffer with the same ailment they are trying to advise on. Yes, one of the biggest issues is that we don't have the proper health insurance. True, Tina. And not just insurance, but fear. African Americans, especially those who were our parents and our forefathers, did not trust the doctor, especially white doctors. That's why a lot of our parents went to black doctors. That's the closest they could trust. But they were far and few between. And one black doctor was servicing everybody. It was just wearing him out. And so we didn't. Our fathers didn't go to the hospital, to the doctor, and get checkups because two things were against them. Number one, lack of insurance, lack of money, and of course fear, because they heard too many tales of black people being used as guinea pigs in laboratories. We heard about the syphilis case, the fear today is harvesting. What's the word? Organs and things like that, and all kind of fear. It's cultural, and we were taught that, and so men didn't go to the doctor, and then they got sick, and then they only went because they were forced to go there. Good to see you, Manuel Doohy, high school buddy. All right, so this thing is a problem, and it needs to be dealt with. You need to seek help. Many of you don't even know you have it, and you do. They trust that blessed oil, brother. I know they do. They trust that blessed oil more than anything. And medicine has become a problem. The Tuskegee experiment. Yes. Thank you, Deanne, and organ harvesting. I get it. Men don't want to be hooked on medicine, and yes, the doctors are in the business of instituting or administering medicine, because that's where the big dollar is, and the doctors are in cahoots with a big pharma. I get it. And many of them have received expensive trips to and fro around the world, and getting toys like new cars and all this stuff, because big pharma is paying these doctors to do what they do. And I don't believe that doctors who go to medical school learn holistic medicine. They learn more about medicine than they do the holistic way of living. And so this is the problem. And so they give us these medicines where the side effects are worse than the problem that we have. All right, so we go in there with an aching toe, and then the medicine causes another organ to shut down, and that which shut down kills us. So that's another problem there. So men get hooked on medicine, and this is why the opioid issue problem is vast, and there's just no way out of this because we're not trained. And so that's why I thank God for, I think it's a net, the Mind, Body, and Mind, okay, the net show, I call it, have Dr. Hill on her shows once or twice a month and talk about a holistic health and how to take care of your body and preventive measures. What is the old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. In a number of cases, these illnesses are associated with what our dietary choices are. That's right, Pitts. That is so true. So if you go to that show on Facebook, I break down more in depth some of the issues with, I talked about even Jesus and how he also had temporary bouts with some disorders as he was dealing with the disciples and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Sanhedrin, okay, and on the cross, and how the hyperhidrosis in his he bled, he sweated blood and water, and all these things, and it's his mental anguish in the Garden of Gethsemane, all right, and all these things overtook him, all right, and so if these things could overtake him, or had overtaken him, don't think that it would not overtake you as well, but you all are overcomers. And if you just talk about it and deal with it with your mouth and not just slapping oil on people and laying them out on the floor and sending them home, if you could just discuss it in more of an educated form, a public form, a more formal form, then we wouldn't have the many problems that we're having today, because many of these disorders are treatable. Understand? They're treatable. People do get better. The stigma behind the information is that once you got mental illness, that's it. You will have mental illness forever, and that's where the problem lies. There is also a role that diet plays in managing mental illness because of malnutrition. There it is, Deanne. Y'all see, y'all are educating us on here. Y'all are educating us on here, all right? So I wrote this book here, The Men's Chronicles of the 4 Women That Men Desire. And I talk about 4 women in the book, but I focused on, in chapter 6, I talk about Girl D. Girl D is the fatal attraction, okay? You know, this thing, the lighting on my phone goes in and out. It's not the lighting in here. I got a lot of light. It's the phone. All right, and I talk about her, and I focused on her mental stability. And I find that there's a Girl D all over the place. Girl D is in the church. Girl D is on your job. Girl D wears a black robe, and y'all call him or her Your Honor. Girl D is a senator. Girl D is a congressperson. All right, a representative. Girl D is a mayor, a governor. Okay, Girl D is the Secretary of State. You know, Girl D is out there. And I broke her down in sets of 7. She's a professional woman, I talk about. All right, she has managerial role. She might be a partner of a corporation or a law firm, or she's a CEO. She's a business owner. She's a proprietor. She could be wealthy. All right, this Girl D here, you'll have to buy the book and read further. All right. She's image conscious, I talk about. She's sexually dominating, all right? And sex has a lot to do with mental illness. Sex has a lot to do with mental illness. As a matter of fact, again, bipolar disorder, there's a lot of things dealing with sex. That disorder causes a person to be oversexed. I mean, they're always thinking about it. They have nightmares and night terrors, and they don't drink. They don't sleep very well. They have, what do you call it, when you can't go to bed at night? You're up all night long. My ex would work a 10-hour day and come home and couldn't rest, couldn't sleep. And when she finally did sleep, she slept maybe 2, maybe 3 hours, and then she was back up again. And that was part of her disorder. Yeah, poor Lilith. Yeah, she's not alone. She's yes, that's it. Thank you, Cynthia. Insomnia. She had bad insomnia. Just couldn't sleep. She's hypersexual. She's a nymphomaniac. She's a paraphilia. Is what she has fetishes. Is pretty much what I'm saying here. And she's into, of course, cyber sex. She likes to experiment with sex in all type of ways. She prefers spontaneous and risky sex. This girl D. All right. She's extremely private. Talk about, and private has a lot to do with it. It's one of the symptoms of mental disorder. She's very controlling, which is another symptom here. She is mentally unstable. I put here number 6. She's either overly spoiled or totally ignored. All right, and I talk about the functioning alcoholic effect that this girl has. She's a drama queen in chapter 7, point 7 in this particular chapter. And she hates other women. Did y'all hear that? She hates other women. Other women is a challenge, is a threat to her. She's extremely picky. Other women is a threat to her. Now it says here, what are some of the reasons behind it? What causes mental disorder? There is no single cause for mental disorder. A number of factors can contribute to risk for mental disorders, such as your genes and family history. There was my ex had a daughter, and the daughter was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And as I did the study, there is a gene that there was I think it's called schizophrenogenic, which is passed down from the mother. The mother is not schizophrenia, but she's just a carrier, and she can pass that down to her children. So the one daughter was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So this is your genes and family history, your life experiences such as stress or a history of abuse, especially if they happen in childhood. History of abuse, especially in childhood. If some of you have been molested, you've been raped, sexually abused, and it followed you throughout life, and you've had some really shaky situations in your relationships with men, if you're a woman, and if you're a man, same thing. Bro Batch said, that's why I believe in generational curses. I do not. I do not believe in generational curses. As a matter of fact, I broke that down in this book. We call it generational curses, but we're calling it incorrect. We're incorrect when we call it a curse. It's not a curse. Since we're here, let me talk about that right quick. A lot of children experience PTSD, yes, especially, again, remember I talked about cultural. A lot of black kids saw death on the streets. They saw their friends shot. I walked the street and I saw a couple men shot in the head and laid there dying, and then he died. All right, that could have been a traumatic experience for me that set into me, and I could have lived with that for a long time into my adulthood. I could have PTSD to this day, and so those who are studying psychology are discovering that they can't just treat one group of people. You can't just treat white people and black people for the same disorder. They're realizing that some of this is cultural. I talk about it in my book, and I talk about how the church have a lot to do with it. Whether it's our music, how we obey our leaders, okay, what we believe in, and as the Bible says. So the world is trying to treat Christians on things, okay, the Christians have the same disorder as the world do, but the world don't understand the spiritual man of a Christian, all right, because the preaching is foolishness to those who are outside, all right, it's silliness, all right. So but they're trying to treat a cultural man the same way they're treating a person who is more worldly than a person who's spiritual, and it's not working, and they're trying to figure out why. Well, they figured it out. It's called ACE, and you'll have to go ahead and Google that. Men have issues if they've had traumatic experiences with and or by the hands of their mother. That's right. And how men are treated by either the strongness of their father, the over nurturing of the mother, and all these things can attribute to a man acting a certain way, how he treats his girl, his woman, his wife, and his daughter, opposed to how he treated his son. Could have a lot to do with how he was raised up under either the imbalancedness of the mother and the father, the parents, or the balancedness of the mother and the father. Understand? I feel that me and my brothers and sisters come up under a very balanced family life. There's some things about my father I didn't like. As I got older, I understood why he did and said some of the things that he said to me is because the way he was raised, that's all. He only raised me the best way he knew how, because of how he was raised, we tend to cater after how we were raised, whether consciously or unconsciously. Also, how bad theology leads to deepening mental problems. That's a whole show. Yes, theology could definitely lead to that. So to address Brother Bass, a generational curse is a curse. When we seek the word curse, if you are a believer, you use the word curse in the way that the scriptures use it, and God was the one who cursed. God did the cursing. Understand that. And he put a curse on someone either because of what they did, or he cursed them because of what their father or mother did. And he cursed an entire nation because of what one person did. There was a legal term for that, and I wrote it down somewhere. I think it's on my phone. If I move my phone, it'll get in the way. The legal term for it, I don't know what it is, but I will say that acting. It's called acting in concert. Acting in concert, which is, for instance, when a group of men are getting ready to rob a grocery store. It could be 5 of them. They're going in and rob a grocery store, but one guy decided to take out his gun and shoot the clerk dead, and all 5 are captured. The law will prosecute all 5 and charge all 5 with murder. We call it accessories to the crime, but all 5 can be charged with murder because all had one goal in mind. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. That's what it is. That's what acting in concert is, all right? And so God cursed an entire nation for the actions of one, all right? And then he put a curse on the seed of a man or a woman, all right? Yes. And so as we go on, God progressed his plan, and he decided in the text that he says, I will then no longer curse the son for the iniquities of the father. He reversed that. And again, I talk about that in chapter 7. I think I call it, the renewed mind. So when we now talk about curse, it's not a curse. It's actually something that's passed down in the gene. And that's not a curse. That is an attribute, that is a physiological thing that happened. It's not a curse. All right? And I did that whole show on generational curse. It's on YouTube. Go to my channel, and I broke down what a generational curse is. Now, what was I saying? So some of you are walking around with a disorder, and you don't know what it is. You don't know that you have it. You think you're fine. And then what you do is you will say that this person have one. Annette did a show today on narcissism. And narcissism, this disorder is deep. And it is something that we attribute to someone like Donald Trump. E pluribus unum. Yes, out of many, one. That's it, Amber Rogers. Donald Trump is the epitome of narcissism. So when you put narcissism on someone who you disagree with, you got to be careful of that. You really got to be careful of that, because we all feel like we have the power to give a diagnosis to someone, and we never give the prognosis. We always give the diagnosis. Okay, we're always doing diagnostic testing on people and tell them this is what you are, and we have not really examined what the word or the phrase really mean. And then some of it is reverse theology. Good to see you, Travell. We'll say this person has this thing because they have one. Let's say it's a list of 15 things that a narc have, and this person that you're talking to exhibit 2 of the symptoms, and now he's all of a sudden narcissistic. And you got to be careful. You got to look at the total man, and not try and put that on people who you're using that as a defense. It makes you feel good, really, to say this is what you have, and you walk away and says, I guess I told her. I told him. All right. So who is at risk for mental disorder? Mental disorders are common. More than half of all Americans will be diagnosed with a mental disorder at some time. More than half. Yes. How are mental disorders diagnosed? The steps to getting a diagnostic is a medical history, a physical exam, and possibly a lab test. And if your provider thinks that other medical conditions could be causing your symptoms, a psychological evaluation, and you will answer questions about your thinking, your feeling, and your behaviors. Before I gave my kidney to Cedric, who has passed on a month ago, I had to go through mental evaluation before I was qualified to give my kidneys. Why? Because I had never lived without my organs before, and there are people who donated their organs, and they went wild. They went crazy, as we would say, which is not politically correct. I think that the challenge is that if you raise enough children in an environment where mental illness goes undiagnosed and untreated long enough, crazy becomes normalized. And thus it takes even longer for people to realize they need help. That's it, Deanne. That's it. Takes them longer. We in the church are responsible for this. Black folks are told not to seek help. Travail, yes. You came a little late, but we addressed that at the beginning of the show. Yes. All right. So this stigma is what kills more so than the disease itself. It's like some of my white friends who are very silent over the atrocities that some of their brothers and sisters and white cops and this whole institutional racism, whether it's in the business world, the medical world, the legal world, all right, the whole industrial world, America, that is. A black cop does something, and all these mega churches and white churches who the preacher won't, no rallies, no talks, no discussions about how our people are oppressed. So the silence of especially white evangelicals is more deadly than the act of a police shooting a black man who can't defend himself. Police killed a black man, and then all of these silent people, they're doing a worse thing. And so that's what's happening with the stigma in the church. Not talking about it is actually killing more people than the disorder itself. Because the suicide rate is quite high. And people are committing suicide, and these things could have been preventable. it could have been preventable. We didn't allow it because we didn't want to talk about it, because now I have to give the benefit of some doubt here. Okay. All right. I have to give some benefit of the doubt here, is that some of the leaders don't know how to deal with it. There is fear. So we have to pray for the fear of these leaders. They don't know how to deal with it, even though they know that this Sister Betsy Ann, I hope that ain't your name, she has a mental disorder, and the leaders don't know what to do with it. Yet Betsy Ann keep coming to church and causing all kind of, she's running amok. And so some leaders are nervous on how to deal with her, because if they deal with her, she's going to go crazy, and then they don't know what to do with her. Especially if you're having some type of inappropriate relationship with this person. And that's why many of the women in our churches had these men by their testes. I'm using more medical word, okay? By their testes. Why? Because the men were having inappropriate relationships. The pastors were having inappropriate relationships with the members, and he picked that one. That one right there, y'all may call her crazy. And so they have this relationship going on, and then before you know it, he can't tell her, he can't correct her, he can't chastise her, he can't rebuke her, he can't do any of that, because if he did that, then she will reveal to the body what's going on between the two of them. And we have seen this too much in church. Ask me how I know. Go ahead. Ask me how I know. So it was hard. I dated a woman in church. Of course, we were messing around with each other. We kept it secret. She was in my choir. And when I told her that section to stand, she wouldn't stand. If she was mad with me that day, she wouldn't stand. When I told that choir to sit down, she wouldn't sit down. When I told that choir, that section not to talk, she kept talking. Yeah. Tina, they're not equipped. So how do they deal with it? I'm going to ask that a question. So she just wouldn't obey me. Why? Because that night or the night before, I was in her bed or she was in my bed. So how dare you try to correct me in front of everybody? I'm gonna show you, and then here it is. And this was the time before we had social media and all this stuff. And she had me. And one day the bishop pulled me to the side after choir rehearsal, and he said to me, I can't say these words on there because I see my mama on here. So Mama Jag, sign off. The bishop said, son, sit down. Let me talk to you. He says, you know what? You got to stop messing with the women in that choir. I said, what are you talking about? He says, don't play the dumb role. He said, you see that one right there? I said, yeah. Notice, whenever you told the section to do this and that, she wouldn't do it. She's upset with you. You can't. And then what she's doing, she's a bad apple. All right? And it's just rotting from person to person, because she's an influencer. And so when she don't do it, they don't do it. Why? It's your fault. And he looked down at my zipper. He says, Walter, you're the only one responsible for your, and he said the word D-I, yeah. You're the only one that's responsible for your own D. And I said, ah! I yelled like a I can't even make the analogy. He said, "You the only one." I got it then. Or he had to see, but he had to say that to me. He couldn't say that to the other ones. He had to say that to me because he realized this is the best way I can communicate this to this guy right here. And I got it. And shortly after that, I had to cut that relationship off. You understand? I had to cut it off. And once I cut it off, she caused problems in the church when I cut it off. And he said, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? Then she finally left the church, and the church was at peace. And that was a lesson that I learned. And that's why, to this day, I don't mess around with the with the women at any church. I don't mess around with whatever church I'm a member of. Brother George, you sure look nice. Yeah, thank you. Bye. I gotta go. I don't mess around. No, I separate my worlds. No, not gonna happen. I ain't doing it. So if we're a member of the same church, I'm sorry, we can't date. We can't date. They're not equipped. So how do they deal with it? Yes, Tina. There's this thing that there's a dismissal going on. Tina said he was trying to set you free. He set me free. Yeah. How do they deal with it? Number one, again, they don't know that they are part problems by not dealing with it. They just don't know. And if someone can just bring it to their attention and then they still do nothing about it, then God was going to, he must hold that person, that leader, responsible for it, because he was made aware of it and still didn't do anything with it. Look at who was it? Eli's two boys, who was laying with the women right at the door. They was coming in there to present offerings to the Lord and sacrifices, and those boys, Eli boys, was taking the offerings for themselves, and they was messing with the women right at the door. Yeah. Bro said, basically, everybody doing the mess around. Yeah. And Eli did not properly address it with his sons, and God had to finally deal with Eli and his sons. Yes, that might explain why church girls often evangelistically date. Yes, Lilith is missing. Yes, messing up. Yes, when Deanne talks about Lilith, that is the name of girl D. She's Lilith, and if you know the story of Lilith, then girl D will make sense. Google it. Lilith was Adam's supposedly first wife, who was banned from the garden. It is Jewish folklore, but it's quite interesting. It's an interesting tale. And there's some Liliths that are in your church, and they're worshiping with you. They're on the praise team. They've got the flags. They're the dance ministry. They're all over the place. All right. So if you are a professional and you belong to a church, why don't you let the pastor or the leaders know who you are? Introduce yourself. You probably don't know that, or if you're in school for it, let them know I'm in school for this, and wherever I can lend a hand. You know, tell them some of the statistics that's happening among we who are believers. If a statistic, a study is done on African Americans, and it here's the number of how many African Americans have this opposed to who have this, but you dismiss the church. These people here, African Americans, mostly are very religious, right? That doesn't mean they're saved. It just means that they're religious. So many of them do attend some type of worship service. Understand? So whatever the statistic is that the world is studying on African Americans, it will affect your church, because these people are black, are cultural as well, and they go to a church. And how they act is going to affect the church where they worship. Yeah, Hophni and Phineas. Yes, Amber Rogers, come on. See, y'all teaching this. Okay. So, if you are in school for psychology, or you are a counselor, or you could be a Christian counselor or just a counselor, whatever you are, all right, and you belong to that church, then you should let the people know, let the leaders know, here's what I do. I want to offer my services to this church. Because the people are sick in their bodies, and y'all going to the altar and having your bodies prayed over, and they dismiss the mind. Well, whatever happens in the mind affects the entire body. If my mind is sick, my whole body is sick. All right? So why would you just pray for everything outside of the mind when the mind is the nucleus of the body? It is the center. It is the joystick of the body. And there's a little animal in there with got He driving, and wherever your mind is, your body is going, that little monster in there is driving. All right, you pray for the monster because the enemy is in me, and you got to let the people know this is what I do. I'm in school for it, or I'm a professional, and if they reject you, then at least you made yourself known. All right, I didn't want to go long. I don't even know how long I went now. Okay, what is this? 45 minutes. That's short for the Sirwalterj Jones Show. Alexa, say goodnight to the people.
Good night. Hope you had a great day.
She hopes you had a great day, and I hope you did too. All right, go to Amazon.com right now if you can, and type in this The 4 Women That Men Desire by Sirwalterj Jones. I'm the only author with that name, Sirwalterj Jones. And buy the book, and you can fast forward it to Girl D, and you will see who she is. But that also means that the black church is doomed. If men like you dare not seek a church woman in your church circle, that means marriages and families of stable means cannot there exist. Deanna, I don't have to date anybody at my own church. I pass probably 800 churches on my way to church. All the women at my church. Good show, Walter. Hey, there's Joyce A. Graham. I call her Mama Jag. She did the foreword to my book. She's here. I'm so glad. ACE. I talked about that earlier. Adverse childhood experiences is the most progressive, advanced forms of psychotherapy breakthroughs for African Americans, because it does not ask what's wrong with you. Because it does not ask what's wrong with you, but it asks what happened to you. We who are psychologists and counselors need to ask the right question when dealing with African Americans. There it is. I'm so glad she did this right before I was getting ready to turn this off. There it is, right there. Did not I tell y'all? My mama is here co-signing it. There it is. How do you ask the question? What's wrong with you, or what happened to you? All right, and this is something that is so important. When I went to counseling, I went to counseling, believe it or not, I did, because I was like, I'm good. I'm an ordained elder of the Church of God in Christ. I counseled hundreds. I know what I'm talking about. I'm a big boy. I'm grown. I know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And I was having problems in my marriage. And it was my pastor who decided not to counsel me. He sent me to a counselor with all kind of degrees on the wall. He says, go there. He says, because I've taken you as far as I can take you. This guy can probably help you. And he did. What's wrong, or what happened? And when I got there, he asked me, what happened to you? What are you talking about? What happened? And how old were you when this happened to you? I said, look here. I finally get a chance to talk out all the things that I dismissed in my mind. Unless the church comes to grips with this, it is gone. Yes. Pitts, good night. Do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Come on. Then you will be able to discern what is good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. Come on, Pitts, you in the book. But if a number of men feel this way in a number of churches, and they have good reason, nobody will address. Deanna, are you talking about me again dating women in my church? Trust me, I don't represent men at large when it comes to dating women. Trust me, I don't. Or these churches wouldn't have the problems that they're having with all of the inbreeding. I am a minority when it comes to the statement that I'm taking right now, the stand that I'm taking right now. Travail says Caucasian counselors are not prepared for the black experience. Yes, I shared the black hair trauma for most of us, and my counselor almost fell backwards. Wow. BW, no song. I haven't really sang or played my piano since 2020 started. I'm still trying to find myself for 2020. as my show. I'm revamping it. I'm just trying to find myself. So yeah. All right. But that's about it. If you want to give to the ministry, y'all know where to find it. It's somewhere down there in the YouTube, in the comments, in the description section. PayPal is down there, and Sirwalterj is the Cash App. Be looking out for Mama Jag's new book that's out now on Amazon.com. Again, she did the foreword to this book here, and you could get that, but her book is out now on Amazon. Type in Joyce A. Graham and you will see her whole body of work on Amazon.com. Support her, because it's her who I go to when I have questions dealing with shows like this. Okay. All right. Some of you kept asking me where am I going to be teaching. I'm teaching next week at my church, at our church, Faith Temple Church of God in Christ. I think I saw Sister Wilda Graham. Are y'all related, by the way? Sister Wilda and Mama Joyce. She taught last night. We're doing a series on 1 Samuel. What are we coming out of? Pursue, overtake, and what's the third one? I think I'm hungry. She did pursue last night, and it was wonderful teaching. Next Wednesday I will be teaching on overtake. Join us at 6:45 Faith Temple Church of God in Christ in the little small town of Evanston, Illinois, 1932 Dewey Avenue. Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, 6:45, I will be teaching the class on overtake. All right, gotta go, y'all. I love you. Hey, do me a favor, hit the share button if you please, if you will. And if you want to get part 1 of this show about mental illness, go to YouTube and go to Facebook and type in mental illness. It's hidden in your praise. Mental illness, it's hidden in your praise. Walter Jones. And I did an hour and 10 15 minutes of teaching on that, and how some of the people in your church, the way they're having church, it may be normal to you because of the culture, but some of them need treatment and possibly need medicine. I'm not totally against medicine. I'm against the abuse of it, and the doctors overly prescribing it. But we have to be careful even with that. All right, because you are what you eat, what you intake, and it can overtake you. And then for me to talk about on the spiritual end of it, it opens the portals. It opens the portals of you being overtaken. You start, then you begin to lose your mind, and it allow, I believe, demons, I believe, begin to overtake the mind when certain medicines are given to you. You take. Now that's a whole nother show. All right, so I got to be careful with that, and I'll have to just break that down and consult Mama Jag before I even attempt to do that. I have to consult her on that, because I know my boundaries. All right, but I believe that we allow demon activities to enter into our bodies, our minds, when we take certain mind-altering medicines, and it opens up the portal to, I believe, the underworld. That's what I believe. And y'all may think I'm going crazy for saying this, but I don't care. But this is my belief, and I will consult the proper authorities before I attempt to do any of that. All right, I gotta go. I quit that mess quickly. Yeah, so I'm not talking about all medicines. Absolutely not. No. But do the homework and make sure that before you take any medicine that you ask a lot of questions, because the side effects could be something that can cause you to go into something you don't want to go into. Sometimes it's almost best that you live with the disorder that you are dealing with until they find something that could help you better than this medicine that they want you, that they get ready to administer to you. The side effects could be against, your calling. Yes. All right. Mama said I better stop and eat and get some rest. All right. Gotta go. I love y'all. And ain't nothing you can do about it. Hit the share button. Bye. Oh, wait. I know many people who believe that. The Bible tells us to be sober and vigilant. Yeah. Hallucinating. Yes. Yes, Deanne Travail. What they said.